everybody, and welcome to Sailing Vessel Ocean Harmony. I'm Jay.
And I'm Rod.
And today we're going to be talking about the boat buying process, what started us down the path of buying a boat, and what our experience was in actually taking over ownership of this boat.
Yeah, so in around about 2014, I came across a YouTube channel called Sailing La Vagabond with two Aussies, Riley and Elena, and they had started their adventures living on a boat and traveling, and I saw that as wow, being a bit of a boatie myself, that's a great way to see the world and to live on the ocean. So I came home and showed Jay this video, made her watch it, made her watch perhaps 2 or 3, and then put the seed.
Many videos.
Yeah. And then we started watching Delos and Gone with the Winds when they got their first catamaran, and I was hoping that Jay would show some interest.
I like to think of this process as Stockholm Syndrome, quite simply because of the fact that I have been watching YouTube videos on other boats for such a long time that I basically fell in love with the idea, probably because of the fact that I've been exposed to it so often. So I actually wanted to call the boat Stockholm Syndrome, and I was prevented from doing so. I still reckon that'd be a great name, by the way.
Yeah, so we started seriously looking at boats. We went to the Sydney Boat Show in 2017, where we looked at a few monohulls and then fell in love with the multi-hulls.
Yeah, catamarans just seem to have something over the monohulls. And we kind of, having gone through all of the boats at the boat show, we kind of narrowed ourselves down and realised that both of us were starting to form very strong opinions about catamarans in general, but about 3 different types of boats specifically, and that was?
So we looked at the Fountaine Pajot, the Lagoons, and probably in 2018 we were most in love with the Leopard, because the new Leopard 45 with that front cockpit had just come out. It was probably still a dream at that particular point in time because it was very expensive.
Yep.
And we said, one day we want a Leopard.
One day. But a little bit of a side track here. Some of the things that we have seen in the time that we've been looking at boats, we started looking at catamarans, and initially a lot of the catamarans that we were looking at had their galleys down in one hull.
And that was a Sea Wings mainly, and they were Australian manufactured boat.
And eventually we started to see a lot of boats moving their galleys up into the Salon area where we are now. And that was the most appealing thing for us. And so we narrowed our selections down to boats that had a galley and a dining / lounge area upstairs. And that they basically had the hulls completely free for sleeping quarters. And that's probably why it is that we ended up really narrowing it down to the Leopard and the Fountaine Pajot.
Yep. So we dwelled for another 12 months and went down to the Sydney Boat Show in 2018, where we looked at some more Leopards, and we looked at Lucia, and our dealer Greg Boller, we had a bit of a chat with Greg
from Multi-Hull Solutions.
And Jay had a little whisper in his ear and said, "Hey, can you please send us a price list?" And that's
just so
where it all started.
Just so we had something to work from.
It was, the first price was a little bit scary. It sounded like an awful lot of money, and as it is, but it gave us something to work from, and then we went away and started planning for a long-term life on a boat.
So it really, as you can probably tell, it's not been an overnight sort of, we'll go and buy ourselves a boat. This has been something that's been a long time coming. We've done a lot of watching of videos, a lot of researching of different types of boats before we actually got to the point where we thought this is something we could do and this is something that we should do. Rod said that he's had some experience with boats growing up. I grew up, my family had a 20-foot trailer sailor that my dad actually built at home, and so I had some sailing skill, but I have to say that I'm 53 now, and I think the last time that I'd been sailing consistently was in my late teens, early 20s.
So I did some sailing after I started the idea of living aboard on a boat and wanting to do more sailing. I joined the local yacht club, and I was doing the twilight racing on a Wednesday night and the weekend racing on some monohulls. So there was always lots of good opportunities at local sailing clubs to get some crewing experience, and I will say that has been invaluable in terms of me developing the sailing skills that I've needed to take over this boat.
As we started to get more and more enamoured with the idea of moving on to a boat, either temporarily or permanently, who knew, we started to really refine down what it is that we wanted. And I guess for me, there had to be that combination of livability and sailability. And one of the things that I have to be honest and say frightened me at first was the fact that, as I said, I've come from a 20-foot trailer sailor where my mum, my dad, my sister and I all had weekends or a couple of days away at a time, probably 2 weeks at a most, on the boat. And the idea of going onto a larger boat was a little bit concerning. So I was still thinking in terms of monohulls, and when we started to look at catamarans, it was very big. It was very big and it was very expensive, and oh my God, what happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if we don't like it? You know, this is a big commitment. So it was something we had to research quite carefully. And as Rod said, he then started sailing at the local sailing club. I didn't. So I think this is important to make note of because of the fact that a lot of people will tell you you must have a lot of skill to sail, and then you're going to have a lot of other people saying any fool can get on a boat or a catamaran and sail it.
You don't even need to put the sails up.
The mix
you can
is
run the two engines and not even sail.
And not even sail. But the mix is somewhere in between. Okay, so it is important to have some sailing skill if you're going to sail, and ideally that's what you want to do because you've got a sailboat. But the other thing too is you don't have to feel like you have to be the most competent person in the world to take a catamaran and start sailing it. They're very, very easy to sail.
Yep, so we did the 2019 boat show again. You know, I don't think we actually got any prices at that year. I was also looking at the Lagoon 42 at that point. I think that was probably my number one boat.
Yeah, our number one boat.
And then
at that point,
COVID came. So there wasn't any boat shows, there wasn't any things happening, and we came across some of the seminars that Multi-Hull Solutions were putting together, and one of them was the Isla 40. And it was a revamped version of the Lucia, and it just looked perfect. Some of the things that weren't quite right in the Lucia,
they'd fixed up
in that. And we also at that point in time came across Let's Dance Sailing, which was who were sailing the Med on a Lucia. They talked about how the 40-foot works so well, being under 12 meters. It fits well into a lot of marina berths. It's cheaper, and it seemed like the perfect boat for us to start our sailing journey. So we contacted Greg again, I think in probably 2021, and got a new price and started the process of actually making this happen, where we decided that now that our kids had left home, we would sell the house that we were living in, which was a 5-bedroom house, and downsize into a townhouse that Jay already had.
So in doing that, that freed us up with some capital towards the boat. And at that point, we had a pretty clear idea of what the costs were going to be at that point.
Yeah. And so we, in 2022, sold the house. We paid a 20% deposit on the boat. It's a lot of money. We signed a contract for the purchase, and the boat was going to be coming out of the factory in 2024. Now, we had decided that we were going to continue working and do what we call a sabbatical, where we take 3 months off. I'm a public service servant and I've got some long service leave, and Jay was had a workplace as well.
So basically what we decided to do was we were going to take some time off, go sailing, come back, keep working. But this also meant that the prices that we were looking at initially needed to remain fixed. And as you probably can guess, they didn't remain fixed because interest rates have changed, the exchange rate had changed, and we found that the cost of our boat was going to go up exponentially.
Yeah.
However, we were committed, and we've had to make some changes to our lifestyle in order to make sure that we could cover those shortfalls that we initially had, and that's where we ended up in purchasing our boat, finally putting down the last deposit in
March
this year, as we took ownership of it in June.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the exchange rate when we put our deposit down was 0.69 cents, and when we paid for it, it was 0.60. So a considerable difference we had to find to finish our purchase. Now, we had looked at second-hand boats, particularly during that COVID period. The price of second-hand boats was near
Almost
the price
the same
of new,
price as new. Yeah.
and because of the way we were going to do our first season of sailing, if we had have gone over to look at a second-hand boat, by the time we actually had the boat ready to go sailing, we'd be heading home and have lost our whole first season. So by buying the new boat, we were able to do everything before we arrived and have the boat ready to go when we arrived.
The other thing that was really important in buying a new boat was the fact that we could customise what we wanted and what we didn't want. And Rod did an awful lot of research to make sure that the fit out of the boat was exactly what we wanted. So he researched doing the hardtop bimini, which we'll talk about in another episode. He researched the lithium, the solar arches, all the accoutrements that go to the boat. He did all this research beforehand so that we could basically go back to the dealer and say, righto, we want this style of boat, but we want to add these things onto it. And I think in retrospect, we've come across a couple of people who were not as
Educated?
diligent, I should say, in their research, simply because they didn't know what they were researching.
And I think they didn't know what was
what
available
the options were.
as well. Unless you actually, I'm not sure if this is a fault with any of the dealers, unless you say, can I have this? Quite often the dealer won't even have it on his list of things that are possible.
Or they might have a preferred stockist or a preferred supplier that they'd like you to work with. So in doing your own research, I can't stress it enough. It's really important that you identify the sorts of things that you want and then go down those rabbit holes. So it might be that you think, okay, well, the boat comes with a Genoa and it comes with a mainsail. What else do I need? Well, somebody might tell you that you need a Jenica, or you need a storm sail, or you need a parasailer. You do need to do a little bit of research to identify which of those things, A, is something you're going to need now or can do with later on, and B, can you actually afford it now or can you wait for it for later on?
And the thing is, it also depends on your cruising grounds. So that we've spent a summer in the Med, and we'll probably spend future summers in the Med, but we've got our cockpit clears in the back, and we probably don't need them. But they will come in handy for when if we become full-time liveaboards.
That's exactly right. So each part of the boat buying process, you think of it like a project home. You've got your project home, but then you can add things on, and you can ask the builder or the boat maker or the dealer to actually add these things in for you.
Or you can add them in yourself afterwards.
So you do have the ability to not accept some of the things, not all, of the things that the dealer offers you, and you do have the ability to choose alternatives. It is important, as I said, to research what you think you're going to need on the boat. To get advice, go onto forums, have a look at YouTube videos.
The Fountaine Pajot owners group is really good.
Yes.
They let me onto it once I'd paid the deposit, and I was able to ask questions about various options, what people thought of things, so that it gave me a really good understanding of owners who
Yeah.
have got the same boat and what they've bought and what works and what doesn't.
And particularly what doesn't. So we've come across some people recently who had bought a Jenica, and they didn't realise that they could get a coloured Jenica, or they couldn't get a Jenica that had their logo on it. It's little things like that. Asking the questions means that you need to have a little bit of research behind you, and once you've got that research behind you, then that will allow you to ask more questions about what it is that you can and can't add on to your boat.
Right, so back in terms of the boat buying process, when you actually pay your deposit, you select your first set of factory options.
Yep.
And then roughly 3 or 4 months before the dealer will come back to you and say, hey, we're going to start building your boat. You need to lock down these options, because
that's 3 or 4 months before the delivery.
Before delivery. So if we were being delivered in April, this came to us in about November. However, roughly at the boat show in August, we got told that the colour scheme was being changed on the boat, and we would be sending you a new colour scheme to choose from.
So this kind of threw a spanner in our works, because we didn't have a clear picture of what the colour scheme was going to be. We had a mental picture of what we thought our boat was going to look like based on what we had actually seen, and we knew now that this was going to change. When we got the new colour samples, we didn't have photographs of them in situ. We only had a guide, it's going to be blue. So we didn't know exactly how the furnishings, the soft furnishings that the sofa covers were going to mix with the new colour scheme for the boat. And that's something to be aware of too. Changes to the decor and style of the boat aren't necessarily going to be something that is an opt-in or opt-out. It will happen, and for the most part, that's just what changes.
Yeah. There are
the way
some options. For example, they changed the colour scheme of the standard fabric from a white, which is similar to what we've got on our boat, to a mocha colour.
So like the brown colour behind us.
But they gave you the option to choose the white at an extra expense.
Cost.
But some of the colours are like the colours of the kitchen doors that were once white and looked like a bright and airy kitchen, have now gone back to what I'd say is
It's a beach colour.
older style timber boat looking cabinetry.
Yeah, it's a beach sort of colour. So
it's
soft,
not bad.
Soft wood, the same colour as the
It's not bad, but we really like the white.
We really like the white.
White cupboards.
That being said, though, the next part of our boat buying process, as well as going and doing the research for all of these things, there were some items that weren't able to be handled by Multi-Hull Solutions that Rod needed to organise ex-factory and have someone fit them onto the boat. And that includes our hardtop.
Yeah, so the company that Multi-Hull Solutions were dealing with for their hardtops was a European-based company, and at that point in time they didn't have any hardtops for the Isla. So I contacted a company in the United States called Dedicated Marine, and organised and paid for a hardtop to be shipped over to La Rochelle, roughly 2 or 3 weeks before the boat was going to be coming out of the factory. And Multi-Hull organised the installation of that hardtop. I think they probably may have been able to do the order, but I was happy to do the order. That way I knew what I was paying for, and I'd been talking to this company for a while. And so they organised the installation of that. But prior to that part, we had to choose our options list.
Yep.
So the options were the things that were on the boat that was coming out of Fountaine Pajot.
Yep.
We chose no generator, no air conditioner, and we then chose various options for aftermarket, which was things like lithium and solar, and the Jenica and a few other things. And you had to lock those things in roughly
prior to the final purchase.
final purchase.
So which is about 3 months before the boat is handed over.
Right, and so therefore that locks in what your final price is and what you're going to end up paying for the final boat.
Now, Multi-Hull Solutions have been excellent for us because of the fact that they've organised for all of our aftermarket products to be installed on the boat. They've used a third party to do that installation. And for the most part, we've had no problems with the work that's been done, and Multi-Hull Solutions have overseen all of the installation.
Yep. So there's a point around about a month before the boat comes out of the factory that you get the bill of sale document, where at that point in time you've got like a serial number for the boat, and you need to start 2 processes rolling. You've got to start your registration process with if you're an Australian. In our case, we've got the AMSA Australian Shipping Register, where you then get your bill of sale and you send the original copy off to AMSA in Coffs Harbour, together with the price, which is about $1,800 Australian for the registration of the boat. You need to have chosen a name at that point in time. The AMSA site has a list of names that have already been taken, so the name in Australian shipping has to be unique. Fortunately, the boat name that we had chosen was not taken, and we start that ball rolling. The other process that you need to start rolling is your insurance, and that's important because they won't pretty much let you take it out of the factory until you're insured. Now, prior to us getting insurance, I did a 5-day day skipper training program with Pacific Sailing School in Sydney, which gave me my RYA day skipper certificate, which was equivalent to the ICC. Now, our insurance didn't request that, but there are several times in Europe that I'm told that you will be asked for your ICC.
Yeah, and look, to be very honest, we had some family members who were concerned about our lack of sailing experience, mine being such a long time ago and on such a small boat, and concerned also that, you know, neither of us working together would know how to actually sail the boat properly. So it was reassuring for family as well as for ourselves to have Rod do his day skipper course. It gave us a bit of confidence that we knew what we were doing, or at least he knew what he was doing, and I can be deckhand. But it also allayed some of the fears for our family members. But as Rod's pointed out, there are a lot of insurance companies who require you to have a day skipper course or some other qualification before they will insure the boat. So you need to make sure that you check that with the insurance company before you accept an insurance quote.
Yeah. So then essentially we got back the registration documents. You've got to do what they call a marking of the boat and certify that you've marked it. So we organised Multi-Hull Solutions to mark it. We then were
That's your registration number that's on the inside of the boat and the
name.
Outside of the boat
and
the name.
And so once we had Multi-Hull Solutions do the marking, we then were able to certify it had been marked. We got our registration papers, we got our insurance documents through. We paid around about $7,500 Australian dollars for our insurance for the 12 months, based on sailing in the Med and approximate 3 to 4 months sailing time.
Yeah. So the next thing that we did, so that's covering our insurance and it's covering our registration of the boat. It's also covering what we organised with Multi-Hull Solutions in the way of the boat prior to picking it up. But there's a couple of other things that we needed to bring onto the boat to make the boat a liveaboard. And that's simple stuff: towels, sheets, plates, cups, knives, forks,
and so
life jackets.
And we started planning our trip over to Europe. So we got a confirmed date when it would come out of the factory from the dealer. and then we got some guidance about when the aftermarket would be ready. And then basically we said, well, we'll come over about a month after that. Because we have heard stories about people turning up and their boat's not being ready.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with multi-hull solutions, but they've found a problem with the boat,
Yeah.
or so they haven't been able to get an item. So we decided to wait that extra month, and in fact, we didn't book our flights until literally 2 to 3 weeks before we were due to fly out.
Now this actually worked out really well because it gave the aftermarket installers the time to be able to put pieces together on the boat. It also meant that because we were on a short window of time that we could take off our respective workplaces, it meant that we weren't going to be using time waiting around for somebody else to finish something off. So by the time that we got over to La Rochelle in France, everything had been completed, or I should say, the majority of things had been completed. That was the last bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So during that time frame, though, that we were waiting for the boat to be finished in La Rochelle, we were collecting the things that we thought we were going to need from Australia to take with us, because we weren't sure what we'd be able to pick up in France.
And some of the things we found that we were able to find the Chandler websites. So we found that in some cases things were going to be cheaper for us to take with us.
To bring from Australia.
We bought our EPIRB from Australia, and
From Whitworth's.
we got from BCF.
Oh, BCF,
for $329 Australian. And I think that if we bought the same EPIRB in Europe, it was going to be something like 500 or 600 euros. So we gathered our, started packing early, and then gathered all our goods ready to go. So I think that pretty much covers our boat buying process. The next installment will cover our trip over to La Rochelle and picking up the boat.
Okay.